Okay, we're gonna get rocking and rolling here. Now, if you want to follow along, that would be good, right? Because you're gonna kind of get an introduction to those things. If you don't want to follow along, that's okay too. Okay. So make sure you're in Photoshop, right? Photoshop's the one with the P and the S, right? In the application, it says Photoshop at the top. Okay. The first step you're going to do is you're going to come here to Canvas, into the assignment, and you can pick any of these photos for the assignment. You just need to fix and restore one. So it doesn't matter which one you pick, okay? But you need to fix and restore one, okay? So I'm going to pick this middle one right here, and I'm going to right click on it, and I'm going to say Save Image As. Okay. As soon as I do that, I can download it, and everything's going to be, I can just say save. I can tell where I'm saving it to, okay, if you want to stay organized that way. I already have it downloaded, so I'm not going to download it again. But that's how you do that, okay? Then once you have it downloaded, you're going to jump into Photoshop, and we're going to say open. Okay. Then we're going to come to wherever that was downloaded. In my case, it's in the downloads, and it's called Damage 2. There it is right there. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and click open. Now, as a reminder, I'm actually recording this right now, so I'm going to post this later, trim it up a little bit so that you can rewatch this video if you need to. Okay, so that's there for you. Okay, but now that we have this photo in Photoshop, right, there's a few things we kind of need to orient ourselves to, right, and kind of as a reminder, over here is our toolbar, okay, over to the very left-hand far side is our toolbar, okay. This contains all of our Photoshop tools, all of the things that Photoshop contains, okay. Kind of here in the center is our workspace, canvas, what else do they call it? Work window, viewport window, like lots of things, right? But this is where you do your work, okay? And then as you continue to the right-hand side over here, you have different windows for different properties, okay? This is typically where you find all your different, and I know there's like a properties panel, which is a little bit confusing, but basically, you can find all of your customization over here, okay? So colors and properties and adjustments and your layers and all of those things, okay? Then at the top you have some different options for each tool that you click on. So right now I have my text tool selected, so I'm seeing options for the text tool, okay? If I select a different tool, like the crop tool, you can see that I have different options up there. Okay, so this changes, this menu up here changes based on what tool you have. Okay, that's a quick overview. Then there's this Learn tab. This has a bunch of the tutorials, different things like that in here as well. Look there, you can see fix a photo. So if you wanted to learn how to fix a photo and you weren't in my class, you could learn there, right? For now, I'm just going to kind of minimize this whole Learn tab and Libraries tab over here. Okay, and the way I'm going to do that is there's this little double arrow. I just kind of see that right there. A little double arrow, okay? And I'm going to go ahead and click that. It'll collapse it for me so it's not as big. Okay. Now I'm going to say make sure I'm staying on the crop tool. Okay, right there. So I've got that selected. And that's the first step I'm going to take is the kind of, okay, let me back up a little bit. Okay. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look at this photo and I'm going to look and try and find what will be. First of all, always think about the easiest way to correct the photo. Okay? Don't work hard, work smart. Okay? Work smarter, not harder. That's the way that goes. Okay? So, the easiest way to get rid of these like big patches here that are missing, okay, is just to crop the photo in a little bit. Right? So that's the first thing I'm going to do. Because, yeah, I could come in with like the cologne stamp tool, which we'll look at, or the healing brush tool, or the patch tool, or all of these tools that we're going to look at. Okay, and I could try and restore that. Or I could just crop it. Right? Which is easier. Okay, so I'm just going to snug this in just a little bit. And maybe not quite that far, but enough to kind of get. So I'll still have to come back maybe and hit some of this a little bit, but not as much, right? So I'm going to try and kind of crop that a little bit evenly, and just to make it a little bit more uniform, I'm going to kind of crop the top and the bottom as well, kind of get rid of some of that work down there. Okay, and so now I've made my crop. I'm going to go ahead and either hit the check mark or hit enter. Either way works. Okay, so now I've cropped in, I've got a lot less work, okay, already. Oh, wait, first, let me undo that, Control Z. The very first thing you want to do, actually, is make a copy of this layer, okay? The easiest way to do that, there's a couple ways to do it, but for me, the easiest way, right-click, duplicate layer. And we're just going to call this one Restore. Okay, click OK. And the reason why I do that is that way you always have an original to come back to. Okay, this type of editing is called lossless editing. Okay, because you're not ever losing anything. Does that make sense? And so that way, if you do something horrible to the photo, right, totally mess it up, you can always come back to the background that hasn't been touched. Okay, so Photoshop does work in layers. Okay, and it's a very, very common thing for actually all of the Adobe products to work in a layer format. Okay, and what that means is that I have to be selected on the right layer, the layer that I want to affect. Okay, and it also means that when I'm doing something on this layer, right, this first layer, perhaps, it won't affect this bottom layer. Okay, and some of the things I do will affect all of the layers. Okay, and we'll get into that a lot later, but right now just know that you want to just work on the one layer. Okay, because you can put in things like adjustment layers, and that adjustment layer will affect everything, or masking layers, and that'll kind of affect everything. Okay, but right now, this is what's important. I'm getting distracted. Getting too deep. We're just scratching the surface right now. Okay, so we've made a copy or a duplicate of that layer, and we have our restored here. If you can't right-click for whatever your mouse isn't working that way, you can also come down. You can just click and drag the layer to this little plus button down here at the bottom, and that'll make a copy of it for you. There's a little plus button down in the layers panel. Can you guys see that? I don't even know. Let's see if I can zoom in on it here. It won't let me zoom in on it. But it's right here. There's a little plus, there's a garbage can going from the right to the left here, and there's a little plus button. If you click and drag that down, you can duplicate a layer that way too. Okay? That's the other way to do it. All right, and I'll see if I can have the tech or somebody come in and set up so that these mice all have right-click enabled. Because, you know, I love Mac, but at the same time, they do some silly things. Okay? All right. So now that we've got our working layer here, I'm going back here to the crop. I'm going to crop in the sides. Okay? And crop in this side. And crop in the bottom a little bit. And crop down the top here. All right. And hit enter. Okay. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to start with my clone stamp tool. Okay, which is, again, on the left-hand side, your toolbar. Okay, and there's this one that looks like a little rubber stamp. Okay, that's the one you want to pick. Now, you'll notice oops, okay, hold on, Photoshop, just relax. You'll notice a lot of these tools have a little arrow in the corner. Okay, what that means is that there's other options underneath that. So if I click and hold this brush tool, for example, you can see that it pops out this menu here, and I have a lot more tools underneath there. Okay, and they did this because it looks nicer when you are using it. But it can be a little bit confusing. Okay, so just know if there's a tool that exists on my tool palette, but it doesn't exist on yours, it may be underneath that menu. Okay? So just be aware of that. All right, we're going to start with the clone stamp tool. Now the way this works, okay, is you first have to select a source for it to copy or for it to clone, okay? And the way you do that is you hold down your Alt or Option, I think, on Windows if you're on a Windows machine, right? But it's the Alt key here, and you'll notice that it gives me a little target. Can you guys see that? Let me make my brush size way bigger so that you can see kind of what I'm talking about. Oh, it doesn't affect it. Okay, but there's the little target. See how it changes the little target? Okay. When I change it to that target, what's going to happen is it's going to select that source. Okay. So I'm going to hold down Option or Alt. Okay. And I'm gonna just kind of select this little bit of a clean area right here. Okay. So I'm gonna select there with one click while holding Option Alt down, right? One click. Okay, and that selects my source. Then I can let go of the Alt. Okay. And now what I can do is I can come in here and I can paint over the lines. Okay, and just kind of emphasize this here. You'll notice, hopefully, that there is my source there, and there's a little target button. That's telling me where it's grabbing my source from. Can you guys see that on the screen up there? Or on your own screen? Okay. So it kind of works a little bit differently. Okay, but again, Alt to select your target, and then with one click, and then you can just start clicking in some of these areas that have these veins, and you can start cleaning up the photo that way. Yes. Okay, let me come. Okay, so clone stamp tool, and then if you hold down your Alt, you'll click. Yeah, so see how it's grabbing. So if you click and hold for just a second, bang, click, and then come over here, let go of the Alt, and then click and hold. See how it's grabbing right there? That's where your source is at. So if you come over here, it's going to grab some of the hair or some of the, does that make sense? So wherever that little plus button's at, it's going to grab from. See how you move into the hair and it starts moving over there. Okay, so that's how that works. So you may need to, and this is the other thing, here's the thing with the clone stamp tool, okay? You may need to reselect your source every once in a while. Does that make sense? So as you're going through, right, as you're going through, if I came over here, way over here, my plus button might be, my source might be grabbing from this, right? So I'm just copying the damage somewhere else. So I may need to reselect my source, okay? That's the biggest thing with the clone stamp tool, is you're constantly having to reselect your source, okay? So I'll select a new source, come in, start painting, select a new source, start painting, right? Select a new source, kind of clean up this dot here, select a new source, clean up that dot there, right? And I'll just start, I'm continuing to Alt click somewhere else, right? So I can select a new source because I don't know how far my thing is. You'll also notice that if I select clear over here and then I'm over here, see my plus button up there? Can you guys see it on my screen? See how far away it is? Okay, so the distance, the source target kind of remains the same distance away from your clone stamp. Okay, so that's another reason why it's important to kind of select closer to your mouse, right? So that you're kind of grabbing from the same area that your clone stamp tool is in. So I can come in, I can do lots of clone stamps, right? And I can start cleaning this up. Okay? But I'm going to stop here and I'm going to move on to the next tool. Okay? So that's our first tool, the clone stamp tool. It's very handy. It's very good for cleaning up these veins, right? Like this broken white vein kind of thing going through the photos. It's good for that. It's good for the little dust dots, all those kinds of things. That's the clone stamp tool. Okay? The other one that we're going to look at today is the spot healing brush tool, and the healing brush tool, and the patch tool. Okay? Now, the spot healing brush tool has a few different ways of working. Okay? You'll notice as soon as I click it up here at the top, it has this little type, content aware. That's kind of what you want to stick with. Okay? Now it's kind of like the clone stamp tool, except for it automatically decides where it's going to sample based on the area around it. Okay? So let me show you an example of this. What I can do is I can come in and you'll notice it's painting black, right? And I can paint in an area. And then as soon as I let go, the computer analyzes the pixels around it and fills it in for me. Okay? So think of it as a faster version of the clone stamp tool. Okay? But so that's a positive, right? Fills in things a lot faster for you. Here's the downside of it. Let me see if I can get it to not work. And they've really improved this tool. If I came in here, right, it may cause some problems for me, right? Or it may not just do it completely. And so there's some options with that, okay? Some considerations with that. If it's not working, maybe you need to go to the clone stamp tool, okay? Kind of clean up the area around it. It's also really good for dust particles, the veins, right? These white veins that run through the photo. It usually does a pretty good job. The dust particles, okay? All of those things. Okay? That's that one. It's pretty quick. The healing brush tool kind of works the same. Okay. Again, you can select, it works a lot like the clone stamp tool. You select something and it kind of comes in and heals it that way. Okay. There is a few differences, but we'll get into that later because it's differences that you don't notice outwardly, right? It's technical differences between the two tools. Okay. The patch tool. This is a really cool thing. Okay. The patch tool works on selections. Okay. So I've got this damaged corner up here, right? So what I can do is I can come in and I can select around or draw around this corner. Okay? So that's the selection that I want to, or the corner I want to fix. What I can do now is I can click and drag this, and you can see I can grab a selection from somewhere else in the photo, and it pasted in there for me. Okay? And there's some things like opacity and other things like that that are affected, okay, by this. But it's kind of a cool tool because let's say this guy right here. I'm going to select this. Okay. And now I can just click and drag that up here. Boom, it's fixed. Right? And I didn't have to do a whole lot. Okay. And then I can go back to my clone stamp tool. I need to, okay, hold on. Come on now. Don't freak out. Why? Yeah. Okay. Okay there, computer. And now my computer's acting up because it's trying to record and run Photoshop at the same time. But those are the 3 tools, okay, or 4 tools there, okay? So I'm going to give you guys the rest of the time, which is about 30-ish minutes here, to work on the photos, okay, to start fixing it and healing it, okay? Once you get that done, okay, I want you to come up here and say File, and maybe File, Save As, okay? You're going to want to save it. You can save it either place, but it's easier to just save it to your computer, okay? Save on your computer, name it, and save it as a JPEG of some sort. I don't care which one you pick, okay? I just usually pick the first one. That's the one I would suggest. Save it as a JPEG, and then hit save. Okay, choose where you want it to go, give it a name, hit save, and you can upload it to Canvas. Okay, if it is not saved as a JPEG, Canvas will not accept it. Okay, if it comes in as anything other than a JPEG, Canvas will not accept it. It will tell you this file is not accepted. And then you'll be like, I did it, how come I can't turn it in? Or you'll email it to me. Right? Canvas won't let me turn this in. It's because it's not a JPEG, okay? And everything needs to be turned into Canvas, okay? I appreciate you guys emailing me. I appreciate the work that you're putting in over the weekends. That's awesome. You guys rock, but it needs to be turned in on Canvas, okay? Canvas is where I can grade everything. Canvas talks to PowerSchool, all of those things. Okay? So please, please, please just turn it in on Canvas. Cool? All right.